Next, we will hear from John Board, patiently with us all day.
Good. That is not what I wanted. This is what I wanted. That's what I want to get up.
Good evening, Representative Gilchrist, Senator Seminara, Representative Dathan, members of the Human Services Committee out in Zoom land. My name's John Board. I'm testifying today strongly in favor of 5241, an act establishing a Bureau of Coordinating Deaf, Hard of Hearing, and Deafblind persons for their new bureau. Like you all know, the Bureau is going to be based out of DADS and based on the implementation recommendations of the 2023 study. The key findings of that study are focused on improving access to government programs and services, healthcare, ASL interpretation, and emergency communications. The one thing that I would want to highlight with you guys is ASL interpretation and trying to find a way to strengthen that pipeline since there is a deficit of interpreters statewide. Currently, there are 37 state agencies across the nation that provide services to the deaf and hard of hearing individuals, and we're the only one in our region that does not have an established bureau. Like I said, to highlight ASL education, I'd be remiss if I didn't bring up Senate Bill 655 from last year, which was going to be increasing funding for ASL education. I can go on in terms of what you have in front of you with my written testimony, but I will give the time back to you guys, and if there's any questions that members of the committee have, I'm more than happy to answer those. Once again, thank you for allowing me to testify, and hopefully you guys get out of here at a semi-decent hour.
Thank you, John, and thanks for directing us to your testimony. We'll be sure to go and look at it. Senator Seminara?
Yeah, I just wanted a little bit of clarity of what you said by having 37 state agencies.
Yes.
Is that throughout the country?
That's throughout the country.
Throughout the country.
Throughout the country.
Okay.
So there's 37 state agencies of various different levels or degrees in terms of staffing, prominence within their various health departments, depending on how the state government is structured. But 37 states have some form of an agency dealing with the deaf and hard of hearing community. But there are no, but Connecticut is the only state that does not have a deaf and hard of hearing within the 6 states of our Northeast region. If you're following me.
Okay, yeah, I'm following you. Yes, I'm following you. Okay. So, yes, I think you've answered my question. Okay. So you're saying in our
in the Northeast,
okay,
we are the only one.
We
of
are
the
the
6
only one
that does not.
Okay.
Hopefully that's clear at this hour.
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm slowing down as the day is going. So my apologies for having a little processing issue, but thank you very much for clarifying that.
Absolutely. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. And I mean, what's interesting also is, again, we heard all day, we were the first.
Right.
So we were the first, went away, 37 states in the whole of New England, and now we don't.
And now we don't.
Representative Cook?
Because that makes sense.
Yeah.
So I believe I was told when I started here, don't expect logic. Yeah. So here we go. John, thank you. And I know that you and I have, go back and forth about this stuff a lot. And so my question is, have you shared with everybody else the documents that you've shared with me about the funding? And I'm looking at the spreadsheet that you had texted me over a little bit ago. Have you shared that with everybody?
Yes, I have. Just for the committee's edification, I have done the financial runs on what a K-12 expansion of ASL might look like. I've also, just for more background, previously served on the Board of Regents Higher Education Student Advisory Committee. So there's a lot of talk in terms of higher education, expansion, making sure that that is a credit-bearing opportunity, as well as making sure that our disability services departments in higher education don't lose funding, and potentially the Bureau could be a alternative, like some members who testified earlier today, another resource for our higher ed, as well as our doctorate students. I was speaking with James earlier, so really, once again, going back to my theory of pre-K 18 education, making sure that we got the entire continuum covered, shall we say.
And so I know that you've been with us all day, and you spend a good amount of time with us in this building, and you have for many, many years. And so I want to thank you for that and your dedication to the multiple causes that you find passion in. And I think it warrants, you don't get paid for it, and it's just because it's what's in your heart. And so I know that you were sitting here when I had asked the question earlier about that partnership between an agency addition and the higher education component, which you just started to tip on a little bit, and I know that you have that relationship with the Board of Regents. And there's obviously been that shift of the Northwest Connecticut Community College that really led the education and the outreach for this population to the shift to Naugatuck a few years ago. Do you see a relationship working in that regard from your point of view? Because your point of view is a little bit different, right? You've been a student, you're now advocating, you've been on the Board of Regents. Do you see a relationship between the Amy Porter world with the commissioner and that education world, or do you definitely believe there needs to be two different components to this? And with that, after you answer that, do you believe that what we have now is even begun to be adequate? Not even acceptable, but just adequate.
I'll take the second part of that first, like logically, sure. No, I don't think what we have now is anywhere near adequate. To segue into the first part of your question, I graduated with a degree in interdisciplinary studies, which basically, without giving you a thesis, talked about taking an all of the above approach, casting a wide net, trying to find the connections between, English and science at the end of the day, taking two different perspectives and trying to find the middle ground to try to solve a problem. So I do think there are ways to not only bridge what we have previously, but I think moving forward, we also need to look at what we have with our state universities. Even though we're now under one system, it seems like there's still that divide between the community colleges and the four-year schools. And just from a Western perspective, and we all know Western has their challenges, to say the least, nowadays, but I think there needs to be more discussion even between those two branches, shall we say, of the new system. So there are ways to have those discussions, and yes, it does need to be a multi-department, multi-agency approach. One of the things that you'll notice in my supplemental testimony is a working group that is probably significantly larger than what most of you would find acceptable, but it's taking that holistic, all of the above approach, bringing all the players in one room and, having an all-encompassing omnibus bill, hopefully next session, that we can deal with all of these deaf, hard of hearing, deafblind issues, ranging from education to access, etc. Sorry if that was long-winded.
No, and I understand that we're not in the higher education committee and we're not in the education committee, but I think that we recognize where the faults have gone across the board and the cuts have gone across the board. And so if cuts were in one department and then cuts were in another department, one might be able to carry over, but we've lost everything. And so I think that we really need to take a step back and look at what happened, where we were, why have we fallen, and how do we get back where we used to be. So what I would ask is if all that information and research that you've done, that you share it with us, because I think as we move forward in making decisions, having any of that data would be greatly appreciated.
Absolutely, I will. And to follow up, I think that it would be helpful to have a agency cross-committee hearing day if we have someone if we all meet across the way, if it's education, higher education, and human services, together to, like you were saying, Representative Cook, get a full picture of where we have been and where we will be going in the out years.
Thank you, I appreciate it. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Representative. I don't see any other hands. Thank you so much for your time tonight.
You're welcome. Have a good evening.